Hey economics students, in this video we are looking at this concept of international competitiveness, and we're going to go through the factors that are going to impact our international competitiveness, either improve it or hurt it or decrease it. Alright, so what is international competitiveness? It's basically the ability of our businesses in Australia to compete with businesses overseas on price or quality. So if Australian businesses can sell their products at a lower price compared to the rest of the world, compared to their global competitors, well, they're going to be more competitive. People are, customers prefer to buy at a lower price, or they prefer to buy a higher quality product. So if we can improve our quality, that would also improve Australia's international competitiveness. Now, it's determined by a range of factors, which I'm going to go through in a moment. Most of them are talking about how we can decrease the price of our goods and therefore improve competitiveness. But there are some quality, just less important. So productivity. Productivity is the first one, and it's an aggregate supply factor. Just a quick refresher, remember it's a measure of outputs per inputs. So if we talked about labor market productivity, if we can get more production out of our labor resources per hour, that's an improvement in productivity. That would also mean that our unit costs in Australia are lower, so we can hopefully, that would feed through to lower prices of our goods and services, and therefore we're more internationally competitive. The other thing that could happen is we could improve the quality of our product offering if we improve productivity as well. Now, when we get to aggregate supply policy, we talk a lot about how governments try to improve productivity in order to make Australia more internationally competitive, so we can sell more stuff overseas and improve living standards in Australia. The extension to productivity is production costs. Of course, as I just said a moment ago, if you increase productivity, I'm just going to write P and cross that out. If you increase productivity, you decrease your production costs because your unit costs decrease. But certainly in Australia, we have some high production costs compared to countries around the world. For example, we have quite a high tax rate relative to some countries, not all. We have quite a high corporate tax rate, which is a cost that Australian businesses have to pay. And if businesses around the world don't have to pay that, or they pay a lower rate, well, we're less competitive compared to them. We have a very high minimum wage in Australia, which of course is a great thing for workers. It's great for you and me. And we have really good employment conditions. We get long service leave, annual leave. It's a very safe working environment, which is great for workers. However, it does increase the costs of production for businesses in Australia, and therefore it can hurt their international competitiveness. I'm sure you could make an argument that minimum wages and employment conditions would improve the quality of our product offering because employees are more motivated and satisfied. But from an economics perspective, high minimum wages actually hurt a country's international competitiveness. The next one is the availability of natural resources. Of course, in Australia, we have lots of natural resources which are very abundant and available. And that means our mining industry is much more competitive because we can get access to coal and iron ore and gold and all these things much easier compared to countries that have to work a lot harder to get to it. Also, in terms of our agricultural industry, we have access to clean water and arable land, which means we have good quality growing conditions, good quality land, which improves the quality of our farming or agricultural industry. So we'll have better cows in Australia, better meat, better wheat, all those sorts of things. It also improves the productivity because we can get more out of our land, and therefore we're more internationally competitive. Exchange rates we've talked a lot about, but if we assume, for instance, that our Australian mining businesses are competing with mining businesses around the world to sell their iron ore and coal, and if we take the assumption that things are priced in Australian dollars, so iron ore is priced in Australian dollars and coal is priced in Australian dollars, well, if the dollar depreciates, everyone's going to want to buy coal and iron ore from Australia because it's going to be much cheaper compared to other countries around the world when they exchange their currency. However, if the dollar appreciates, that's going to make us less competitive because foreigners have to exchange more currency to buy the same amount of exports. So we'll be less internationally competitive. Finally, relative rates of inflation is pretty self-explanatory because if prices rise quite quickly in Australia, that's going to hurt our international competitiveness. But this relative part is important because there's inflation all over the world, of course, but we need to compare our inflation rate to other countries. So you might think 6% is quite high in Australia, but if we looked at the UK, it's 10%. And if we looked at Turkey, it's 60%. So actually, relative to countries or other countries around the world, our inflation rate is lower, and therefore we're more internationally competitive compared to those countries. Of course, if all of these things go the other way, so if there's a decrease in relative interest rates, or if we have if productivity decreases, or we lose access to our natural resources, that would be bad for international competitiveness. All right, bye for now.